We are happy to welcome Derek Toombs on to Break the Business. Hi, Derek.
Hey, how's it going?
Now, I don't know this about you, but I'm just going to infer, because you're a filmmaker, that you're going to have opinions about Disney movies. And because you're going to have opinions about Disney movies, you're going to have some opinions on our Billboard list of 100 best Disney songs. So where do you come down on this? Like, what is your favorite Disney song?
It's tough because as I look at this list, I'm realizing something, that a list like this is a fool's errand, because like I'm looking at like Hakuna Matata is number 40, and that feels way too low. And I'm like, well, what did Hakuna Matata like beat? What's like 41? And it's Pink Elephants on Parade. I'm like, okay, well, that's also an awesome song. And so it's like you could start this list from anywhere and say like this should be higher. And so it's insane. I mean, it really gives you an appreciation for how like just on fire all the artists are who do these songs. As far as like favorites, I mean, that's tough. Like I think I had got to say I really like oh man, I Will Go Sailing No More from Toy Story. I know that's like that's like kind of not that it's a deep dive, but it's not like many people's favorite, but that's such like an intense
I mean, so you went Randy Newman on us, but you didn't go You've Got a Friend in Me.
Yeah.
That's how you know we have ourselves a filmmaker, Katie Zaccardi, because he went right to the deep cut. He went to like the hipster's choice of best songs from Toy Story. I mean, that is a crushing scene in Toy Story where that song is playing, and it's made all the more crushing by the terrific song in that scene. So no hate on you there, although the Billboard people seem to hate you because it was not on the top 100.
Yeah, in 100. That's crazy.
So you love the Disney movies, which means you're after our own heart, but you're also after my own heart, I would say, because you are a South Floridian. You were born and raised in South Florida. So you must have one eye on the Heat game score right now.
You know what? I am not a sports fan at all.
No!
Sometimes I'll wake up and be like, oh, thank God, it's one less thing to worry about, because I never got into sports.
I mean, it is a better way to live your life. I've aged like 10 years in the last 3 weeks.
Right.
But, oh man, I wanted to be able to rap with you like a South Floridian. Like, I mean, we never get to like see our own kind anymore, especially with you out in LA and everything. Like that's.
Yeah. I mean, it's to the point that I was out at a grocery store today and I saw a guy wearing like a shirt. And I was like, oh, something big must be going on, because I'm here in Orlando. So, the shirts don't usually make their way all the way up here. So.
Yeah. Well, we forgive you for going up to Orlando. We know that South Florida is truly what's in your heart. I'm pretty impressed by your story, Derek. A lot to like about this. So you started out in the Coast Guard, and then you transitioned into filmmaking. I think you went to film school at age 32, which seems like a later age to kind of get into this. Talk about that transition from military to filmmaking. That's got to be pretty wild.
Sure. So, I mean, I always knew I was interested in film, like as a kid, even like I was making films with like my dad's, like the home video camera and stuff like that. And when I was going to college, when it was time to go to college, I did not get into the film school I wanted to go to. So I was going to community college and I sucked at it because I just wasn't interested. And so like I had zero discipline and stuff like that. But, I eventually joined the Coast Guard. I was a Boy Scout. I used to camp out on a Coast Guard base, love being on the water and stuff like that. So it seemed like a no-brainer. So I did that for about 8 years. I was an electronics technician, worked on radios and radars and stuff like that. But still in my own time, I would make films. I made like a whole web series while I was in like school for the Coast Guard. Probably would have got like in a lot of trouble if they knew like what we were doing. But I brought in a bunch of my friends in on it and stuff like that. It was really a lot of fun. And so when I was coming up on like my 8th year and it was time to decide to stay in or get out, I was like, I really do want to make a run at becoming a filmmaker. And like, I don't want to be this person who kind of like, even just doing it on my own time or doing things adjacent to filmmaking. Like I wanted to know that I gave it my all at some point. So I was like, let's go back to school. Let's go for film. And so, that transition was interesting. I found out I was a lot better at college because I wanted to be there. I was there for a major that I was really excited about. And so luckily I have like a little bit of a baby face. So it took a while for people like piece together that I was like the old guy in their class. And so I had a great time. People will tell you that filmmaking is like people who are not filmmaking, but film school, people who are like detractors for film school will be like, oh, it's all about connections. Just go out and make connections on your own, which is like partially true. But, it does really depend on the group that you're with in film school and like how much you're willing to collaborate with them and things like that. And I had a fantastic class that I graduated with, and we, a lot of us still keep in touch. We work on each other's stuff when we can, even now. And so, that transition was interesting. Just kind of the toughest part was just sometimes you can feel a little bit like rudderless, because you go from the military where there's like 100 years of strategy behind everything you do, and then all of a sudden you're going to school and you can just do whatever you want, and like that's weird, I went through like immediately, I'm like, well, I'm growing out my hair, I'm going to grow out my beard, I'm going to like, and so it was just kind of like a weird just this odd rush of just doing whatever you wanted to do, and getting to focus on what you wanted to. So that was wild, and it took some getting used to, just kind of having that freedom again.
Did you find that there are elements of your military experience that find their way into your filmmaking, whether it's like actually taking stuff from your past and putting it into your films, or just the discipline of military service making you more disciplined than the average filmmaker who tends to not be very disciplined?
Yeah, there's a bit of both there. I mean, the biggest thing that I noticed in film school that being in the military helped me out with is like, I don't panic. Like, no matter what happens, like I know that like you make this decision, then you make the next one, then the next one, the next one. And so, like there were times where, in school we're shooting and we lose our location, or like the cops get called on us because it turns out we weren't actually supposed to be shooting like, right next to an air traffic control tower or something like that. And so, there are times where like people are ready to pack it in because they're like, well, my plan A has failed, and like I didn't have a plan B or whatever. And so I think that was the biggest thing, was just trusting myself to know that I was adaptable, because that's something that they really drilled into in the military. And I also used like elements just from my past. Like the weirdest example is like I wrote a script for like a science fiction Christmas movie, and like as the team is getting ready to get in like their interdimensional spaceship thing, I use like there's like a bunch of commands that get called out on a ship when you're getting ready to go out to sea, and like I use like exactly those. And it was just like, I don't know, fun. It brought like a cool like realism to it. Like these are people who had done this before, and there's like a way this is done, even though it's completely made up scenario. There's like this texture of reality to it. So yeah, both have I've been really helped by my experience in the military that way.
And now today, in addition to being a filmmaker, you're also a teacher. You're at the Los Angeles Film School. I don't know if you've ever run into a guest on this program. We've had Joshua Lastine, who's also a teacher over there. And, we love the LA Film School people around here. You guys are awesome. As you're teaching filmmaking, can you tell us some of the overarching lessons that you tend to impart to the students in your filmmaking classes?
Sure. So my scenario is kind of cool because I teach in the media communications program. And so it's definitely a program I wish that like I had kind of had access to when I was growing up, because we kind of, there's just like a lot of spokes on this wheel for media. And so I'm teaching all the video stuff, all the film stuff, editing, all that kind of stuff. But they're also learning journalism. They're learning, graphic design and things like that. And so there's an interesting element of like, it's one of my favorite things, because I actually, when I first got out of the Coast Guard, I taught at one of those like paint and sip studios where you like paint like a sunset and drink wine and stuff like that. And there's this element where you're teaching something to somebody who otherwise may never have tried it because it looks too hard. And because I'm like the film teacher in like not a film like dedicated degree, I get that experience with them, and that's really cool. Like, and so kind of just this element of like, they're coming to me with really cool things that they see on YouTube or TikTok or whatever, and they're kind of like, oh, is that something I can do? Like, or can I try to do that? And like being able to show them that like the level for entry for making videos and film and stuff like that is not as high as you think it is. And that's probably like my favorite part about teaching my students, is just kind of showing them that like you could do a lot cooler stuff than you realize.
Well, let's talk about that barrier to entry point that you just brought up there, because I think that there are a lot of opportunities for independent creators, like the ones who check out this program, who are not what you'd call filmmakers. Maybe they are musicians. Maybe they are just actors or comedians or podcasters who have an opportunity to do some film or film adjacent thing, to add that to the kind of content they put together to augment what they're doing already. But they probably feel some sense of paralysis about how do I even begin something like this? You know, it seems so overwhelming, this undertaking of getting into filmmaking. What advice would you give those people on how to get started?
I mean, get started on probably just like pick one kind of like formal element that you want to get good at, because it can be overwhelming. It's like, you know, oh, my video doesn't look good and it doesn't sound good and it's blurry or whatever. So like, you know, if
all of that's never stopped just around here from live stream, by the way.
Right. So, you know, if one of those seems like the scariest part, tackle one of those first. Is like figure out, you know, how do I make my footage look good? How do I like myself to where, you know, I don't have black circles under my eyes and things like that? Then just take the next one and the next one. Like, I think that for a lot of people, young people especially, we've kind of fallen victim to like hustle culture, where it seems like as soon as you learn how to do something, you need to be able to do it to the point where like you're a professional and you should be making money doing it. Like, you know, we don't really let people have too much of a learning curve anymore. And I think that that's a big thing that you just need to allow yourself to do, is like, you know, learn one piece at a time, get pretty good at the video, then work on the sound, then and definitely don't start buying gear that you think is going to make your video perfect, because it's not the gear. You know, the best camera is the one you have, the best audio recorders, whatever you have access to, just start anywhere. That's my big advice. Just start anywhere, learn a piece at a time.
Katie, I would imagine that that's similar kind of advice that you would impart to folks in your consulting practice. It's certainly something I impart, where I'll tell people whenever they want to do a new project, the best way to start is just to start. Don't feel like you have to have every single thing figured out, because you're going to figure it out along the way. And even if you try to make everything perfect before you start step one, you're not going to have everything perfect, because there's things you haven't even thought of yet that you're only going to be able to think of once you've started. And so, I mean, have you come across things like that, Katie, and the folks that you've spoken with, like artists who are just so afraid to begin because they need to make everything perfect that they just never start?
Yeah, and not to say that like filmmaking is the same as TikToking, but since you kind of brought it up, Derek, that you work with a lot of people who are newer and sometimes they'll just see stuff on TikTok or YouTube and say, can I do this? I work with a lot of musicians who are trying to grow their social media following. And funny enough, like everything is video now, everything. And so the barrier to entry, while it is pretty low, it seems high for people who have never done this before and don't feel comfortable on camera or don't even really know how to like use their phone to do it. And I feel like a lot of the coaching that I do, yes, it has to do with like, here's how you can actually set this up. Here's some small tips to get started. But a lot of it is like mindset coaching, get people over the hump of you can do this. You can operate can create good videos. You can learn how to edit. You can feel confident showing up on camera. But I feel like a lot of people think either I am creating these like really crazy, insane quality of everything, or I'm doing nothing and I suck. And there is a middle ground in there that I think many musicians can find the balance, but you cannot get there until you start.
And I would imagine if we went back to like some of your earliest stuff, Derek, it's probably stuff that maybe you want to hide away, but it's the stuff that got you to where you are today. Like all of your favorite YouTubers, go back and watch Mr. Beast's first YouTube video, or Hank. You know, everybody loves Hank Green. I'm sure Hank Green's first foray into YouTube, you know, looks not so great compared to the stuff he does now. But you get to where you are from the stuff that you did at the beginning. I think episode 1 of this podcast is a great example. Please don't go back and listen to episode 1 of this podcast. I am begging you. But that's the only way to get to where you want to go is you have to start and be okay with it not being perfect and making mistakes and getting better along the way. It's often the best teacher. And really, as much as we joke, like the first thing you put out isn't as bad as you think it is. And people are going to appreciate that you've given them stuff in a new format.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So turning things back to kind of current events right now. Before we had you on, and even before we even had the show on, Katie and I were talking about the SAG-AFTRA strike that might be happening and the WGA strike that is happening right now, and how a big part of these strikes has been the rise of AI and how AI is going to factor into movies and television. Is AI going to be writing our scripts? Is AI going to be acting in our movies? Do you have any thoughts on kind of where we are with this right now and what your expectations are for what movies and TV are going to look like and what your work's going to look like a few years from now?
Sure. I mean, AI is like, that's like the hot topic for like everybody, especially in academia. We like freaked out when we realized that like students could, basically get like a paper on demand, in 5 seconds. So there's been a lot of talk about that. But as far as using it for, creating content and things like that, I heard a really cool term today, and that was using AI as like an invisible employee. And I think that that's where we are hopefully and should be headed, where it's like you've got kind of this like silent partner in AI, and like you should not be letting it steer you and just like accepting whatever it gives you, but you should there's going to become people will be gain aptitude for asking the right questions and helping it to guide what they're trying to do, versus just hopping over and just seeing what it spits out. And so that's where I hope it goes. I mean, I suspect that we'll get to a point where it'll almost be like spell check, where like at first people were like, oh, don't use spell check, you can't trust that, to where now you're like, you don't get shamed. It's like, why didn't you send this email through spell check? Like, we'll get to that point where it's like, did you run this by an AI like before you like you came up with this? And so I hope that that's where we get, where it just becomes kind of a tool, because it really, I mean, I've tried experimenting with it as far as like storytelling and creating scripts and things like that. And I mean, it's going to get better, but like the first thing I tried was like, I was writing like a detective like mystery story. And I'm like, hey, help me out with this. And it suggested something like, in Act 2, the detective should find clues. And I'm like, oh, thanks. I never would have arrived at that. So like, if I was just using that as a crutch, that's where I'd be, So I think that, it can be really helpful, where it's like, if I'm the one telling it, hey, it needs to find clues in Act 2, help me out. What are some sweet clues? But I don't think, you don't want it to be a load bearing, tool.
Basically, like you're saying that AI is like an unhelpful spouse.
Yeah, no,
that isn't like a writer, and it's just like, what about if a detective found a clue?
Right. No, exactly. That's exactly what I said. I was like, I felt like I had like a disinterested teenager as like a writing partner. Like it's like, sure, whatever. Let him find a clue. Maybe he'll shoot a gun at some point. I don't know. Like, thanks.
Maybe at the end he catches the guy. Whatever.
Right.
See, so what you're saying is you see the best version of AI is being, as you said, invisible, right? It's there, it's having an impact, but it's not prominent. It's not, certainly you wouldn't endorse, say, a podcast dedicating a whole segment to AI and naming the segment after AI and giving AI like 5 whole minutes of the show, right? That would be ridiculous if a podcast were to do that.
Maybe they'll get a pass since it's like the new thing. I don't know.
That's right. Yeah, that's the new thing. All right. So you're a Star Wars person as well. So we talked about Disney, and I guess we're still talking about Disney because Disney owns everything up to and including Star Wars. And I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you a little bit about Star Wars, because in your own neck of the woods in Orlando, where you are now, as opposed to the much superior South Florida where you came from, you all got some pretty cool Star Wars stuff going in there, because you have the whole Star Wars Galaxy's Landing thing at was it MGM Studio? I don't call it MGM. Hollywood Studios. God, I'm dating myself with that reference. But I know that they had that really cool Star Wars hotel that was there, where like you could just like live in Star Wars for 2 days, and it cost $1 billion. But like, I'm jealous because I'm a Star Trek fan, and if you offered me an experience where I could LARP as a Starfleet person for a weekend, like I would give you a blank check for that. But are you sad that hotel is gone now? Did you get a chance as a Star Wars fan to experience it before it was gone?
No. So I didn't get to go. I mean, you talked about the price. I'm a teacher, so no, I didn't get to go to the. But I mean, it sounded really cool. I think we kind of laugh because it lasted less than 18 months, and so it's kind of crazy that it's like already going. But it's cool that they experimented with something like that. I think it was always kind of a weird sell. Like you have to go for 2 whole days, and so that's 2 days out of your vacation taken by this Star Wars experience. And it's got no windows, and you just kind of like on the one hand, it is awesome that you get to do the Star Wars experience, but like the flip side is that you're like sealed into this Star Wars experience. And so
that is such a good point.
So I think that that was like a tough. So I would kill to have like been able to see it. Like I wish that they just like, hey, we're closed, and just like leave the doors open and let people
just let you walk around for a bit.
Yeah, because it does sound really cool. I mean, I've been to, the Galaxy's Edge area in itself is really cool. I mean, it's very immersive. And so I can only imagine what it's like in there. So yeah, it's a shame it's going away. It does. I will say personally, like I get a little bit creeped out interacting with people who like I know are, I don't know how to put it, like if I went to a haunted house, the thing that freaks me out about haunted houses, like when somebody's trying to scare me, I'm like, yeah, I know you're like a theater student at like the college. Like it weirds me out because like I know that's a real person and you're pretending to be someone else like at me, and that weirds me out. So I can't imagine like going and you're like trying to go to a bar or something at a Star Wars place, and the guy's like, interacting with you as if like you're in space. I'm like, hey man, I'm just trying to hang out. Like you don't have to do the thing to me.
You don't have to be on right now, dude.
Right.
But that is the funniest thing I've ever heard a filmmaker.
I know.
I just hate when people are like acting.
Well, I will say so.
You don't have to be on right now, dude. I know you're just a sophomore at UCF.
Right. Yeah. No, I didn't mention this, but I also used to do stand up, and so like there were times where like you can tell when somebody's doing like a bit to you, like if you're just hanging out, and so like I think that's like where that comes from, is like, hey, we're just hanging out, like don't talk in bits. That's weird, and so I think that's just kind of where that comes from. It's like.
Because maybe you're uncomfortable because like, am I supposed to be acting too? Because like nobody's paying me to play a character right now.
No, exactly.
And in fact, I'm paying $6,000 to live in a windowless hotel room, and you want me to like be part of your story?
Be in an improv group? Like no one wants to be part of an improv group.
Right. While I'm buying popcorn or something like.
Yeah.
Just let me drink my $38 blue drink, please.
Right.
Oh, okay. You can find out more about our guest work by visiting twitter.com/newfangeldnpc. Can you tell folks a little bit about your film company, since you deal with our silliness for this long? We should probably give you an opportunity to tell people about your film projects.
Sure. So I've got I'm kind of on the tail end of a festival run for my latest 2 shorts. That's been really cool. It's the first time I really mostly I just put stuff on like YouTube or just kind of made it just for like fun. This is the first time really going traveling with it and going to festivals and things like that, and it's won a handful of awards, and that's been like awesome. Thanks. Seeing it in a theater like with people is unreal. So and I'm getting ready, I'm ramping up for production on my first feature-length film, which is like a huge undertaking, but I'm applying for grants, and I've got some cool collaborators that have already kind of like pledged help and things like that. So yeah, I'm trying to kind of do like a, I don't know, like George Lucas kind of deal, where it's like trying to just like make the material I'd want to see kind of on my own. Like I'm not necessarily trying to move to LA with my pockets out and hope to find, opportunity. What I'd like to do is like make my own opportunity to where I have to move to LA because I'm taking a meeting or things like that. So that's kind of the goal with my studio, is to make, the kind of material that I want to see, and hopefully make it good enough that other people want to see, and just move on from there.
And people can find your films on YouTube, like they just search Newfangled NPC.
Yeah. So I've got my YouTube right now has got a handful of like video essays. I've done like a video essay on like how Kevin Feige got started with Marvel, and like about the insane lead up to when Star Wars Episode 1 was coming out, like the world lost its mind. So I've got a handful of my shorts there too. The 2 that are wrapping up their festival run, they're not on there just yet, but they're going to like their last 2 festivals, and then they'll be up.
Marvelous. Well, good
Yeah.
on you. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Stick around, like stay like in our universe going forward, just so we can keep track of your projects and
Yeah, definitely.
hype you up whenever we can. Before we let you go, Derek, we got one last question for you.
Sure.
Do you have any last tips for the indie creators out there to help them move their careers forward?
Last tips. I mean, that biggest one that I mentioned before is just like that one to start anywhere is like I think it's the biggest one because it's like I think what we talked about is where your first project is going to kind of stink and you're going to learn stuff as you go. I think what the coolest part about that is you'll realize that as you go, the things you're learning and that you want to tweak become smaller and smaller, and they become more like sort of like taste based and not like, oh geez, I guess I should use lights in my video. And then like, a year down the road, you're like, oh, what would be really cool is if I had like warm light on this side and cool light on that side. That's like a thing I'm going to try next time. And so, you're going to go from this like free fall to where you're making these really cool, like, just you're going to become like super talented, and you're going to be making those decisions that set your, any kind of content you're going to make apart, whether that's writing or filmmaking or music. But you'll just notice that and you'll see it in, I think one of the biggest problems starting out is that when you want to make content, a lot of times it's because you have good taste in content. You like good music, you like good movies, you like good books. And when you start out, there's just such a huge difference between the junk you're putting out and stuff that you like. And that can become really discouraging. But, as you grow as a creator, you'll find that like you're looking at the material that you really like, and you're picking up these really small things that they're doing. You're like, well, I'm doing that next. And it's not just like, how do I get as good as them? You're like, oh, what can I borrow from them? Like they become like almost a peer, even if you're not at their full, like their level, but there's, you kind of enter the conversation in a really cool way. So just, just kind of brace for that and look forward to that. Like, you're going to find that, the things you learn are going to become more and more fun, and not, like I said, you're going to stop free falling, and you're going to start making a lot of really cool decisions and content that you make.
Our guest has been filmmaker and LA Film School instructor Derek Toombs. Folks, check out Newfangled NPC, find out about all of his terrific projects. Derek, it's been a real treat. Thank you so much for being on the show this week.
Yeah, thanks for having me. That was a blast.
Our thanks to Derek Toombs, to Katie Zaccardi, producer Lauren, and to all of you viewers and listeners for checking out Break the Business. It's been a treat. We'll see you next week.